We thought the sound was just the pipes rattling in the walls. It wasn't until the closet door handle began to turn that we realized something was inside. My girlfriend and I were on a road trip last spring, driving through a stretch of states neither of us had ever visited. We stopped in a small town and checked into a budget hotel. It wasn't a bad place, clean enough, with decent reviews. The kind of hotel where you drop your bags, crash for the night, and forget about it the next morning. The room itself was simple: queen-sized bed, an old TV, a dresser, and a closet with sliding wooden doors. Nothing remarkable, but as soon as we got in, I noticed the air in the room felt heavy. Not dirty, not musty, just heavier than it should have been. We chalked it up to exhaustion. After a quick dinner, we went to bed early. That's when the noises started. Around midnight, I woke to a faint knocking sound. At first, I thought it was coming from the room next to us. It was rhythmic, 3 dull thuds, then silence. A few minutes later, 3 more. My girlfriend stirred and whispered, "Do you hear that?" I did, and this time it was clear. The sound was coming from inside the closet. I turned on the bedside lamp and stared at the closet doors. They were shut tight, but the knocking was undeniably behind them. We tried to reason it out. Maybe it was plumbing or the HVAC system. The closet shared a wall with the bathroom, so maybe the pipes were knocking. That explanation calmed us for a while. I even got up, slid the doors open, and shined the light inside. Nothing but a few spare hangers swinging slightly as if I'd disturbed the air. But as soon as I slid the doors shut and climbed back into bed, the knocking started again. This time it was louder. We lay there in silence, listening. 3 slow knocks. Then the faintest scraping sound, like fingernails against wood. My girlfriend whispered, "It sounds like someone trying to get out." I laughed nervously, but my stomach turned. That's exactly what it sounded like. Minutes passed. The knocking stopped, and I almost convinced myself we were imagining things. Then the handle of the closet door rattled. Not violently, just a slow, deliberate turn, as though someone inside was testing if it would open. My girlfriend sat up straight in bed and grabbed my arm. I stared at the handle, watching it twitch, shift, then stop. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Finally, I forced myself out of bed. My legs were trembling, but I managed to get to the door, keeping my eyes on that handle the entire time. I swung the closet doors open, half expecting someone to lunge out. The closet was empty. I stood there, heart pounding, until my girlfriend asked me to shut it. I did, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Every creak of the walls, every hum of the air conditioner made me jump. By morning, we were both exhausted. At checkout, I mentioned the noises to the front desk clerk, trying to make light of it. He froze mid-keystroke, then asked which room we were in. When I told him, his face drained of color. He leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. "That room doesn't have plumbing behind the closet," he said. "It backs up to a storage space, completely sealed." I laughed, waiting for him to smirk, but he didn't. He just stared at me, like he wanted to say something else but decided against it. We left quickly after that, neither of us speaking much until we were back on the highway. The farther we got from the hotel, the lighter the air felt, as though a weight had lifted. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. 2 weeks later, my girlfriend texted me in the middle of the night. She had been staying at her apartment, alone. She said she was almost asleep when she heard 3 slow knocks coming from her bedroom closet. When she texted me, she added one more thing. The handle just turned.
Someone slipped a note under my hotel door that simply read, "Do not stay here tonight." By morning, the person who left it didn't seem to exist. I was traveling for work and staying at a mid-sized hotel in a quiet city I had never been to before. It wasn't fancy, but it had good reviews, clean, safe, professional. It's the kind of place you don't think twice about. I checked in around 5 p.m., dropped my bags in my room, and went downstairs for dinner. When I returned, the note was lying on the carpet just inside my door, as though someone had carefully pushed it all the way under. Okay. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, maybe from kids staying on my floor, okay? But the handwriting was strange, hurried, almost shaky, but very deliberate. "Do not stay here tonight." No explanation, no signature, nothing else. I felt a chill creep up my arms as I read it. I stepped back into the hallway and looked around. Everything was silent except for the soft hum of the ice machine near the elevator. No footsteps, no voices. Back inside, I checked the door. It was still locked, the latch intact. Nobody could have come in. I told myself it was a joke, maybe even a mistake. Someone meant to slip it under another guest's door. Still, I left a note on the desk and tried to forget about it, but the feeling wouldn't go away. When housekeeping knocked the next morning, I decided to ask. The woman was middle-aged, polite, and cheerful. I showed her the note and asked if she knew who might have left it. The second she saw the handwriting, her smile faltered. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just shook her head quickly, said she didn't know, and rushed through cleaning the bathroom. Before she left, she muttered, almost under her breath, "You should check out early." And then she was gone. That was enough to rattle me. At the front desk, I asked if they could confirm who had cleaned my room the day before. The clerk looked at his screen, then frowned. "According to our system, housekeeping hasn't been in your room since check-in." I insisted, told him I spoke to her not even 10 minutes earlier. He checked again, called a supervisor, and both told me the same thing. The only assigned housekeeper that day was on the opposite floor. No one had been scheduled for mine. That night, I tried to brush it off. Maybe there was a scheduling error. Maybe the clerk just didn't know what he was talking about. I ordered room service, watched some TV, and tried to relax. But sometime around 1 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. At first, they were faint, slow. Then they stopped right outside my door. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, staring at the small shadow under the crack. Whoever it was stood there for what felt like an eternity. And then, softly, deliberately, the doorknob began to turn. The deadbolt held, but it rattled again and again, each time harder. Scrambled out of bed and called the front desk. They said they'd send security immediately, but just as quickly as it had started, the rattling stopped. By the time security arrived, the hallway was empty. They told me it was probably another guest on the wrong floor, except my room was at the very end of the hall. There was nowhere else to go. The next morning, I went back to the front desk, ready to demand answers. I asked about the housekeeper again, described her in detail, even down to the little gold cross necklace she wore. The manager just shook his head and told me no one matching that description had ever worked there. I checked out that afternoon, even though my stay was supposed to last 3 more nights. A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the hotel online again, scrolling through reviews. Very deep, I found a handful of older ones with chilling similarities. Guests mentioned strange notes, warnings slipped under doors, odd noises at night. One even described a woman in a housekeeper's uniform with a cross necklace who urged them not to stay before disappearing. The reviews always ended the same way, with a guest checking out early, unsettled, and confused. Again, none of them ever found out who the housekeeper really was. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I had ignored the warning and stayed that night. But I do know one thing. Whoever or whatever slipped that note under my door wasn't trying to scare me. Right? They were trying to save me.
He greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. By morning, they told me the man I met had never worked there. I was driving through a rural stretch of interstate late one night, heading to a work conference the next morning. I was already exhausted, my eyelids heavy, when I spotted a lit-up sign for a small hotel just off the highway. Relieved, I pulled in around midnight. The lobby was quiet but not empty. A man stood behind the front desk, dressed in a neat gray vest with a brass name tag that read Thomas. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with slicked back hair and an almost old-fashioned politeness. "Long night?" he asked, his tone warm and friendly. I nodded, explaining I just needed a room until morning. He checked me in quickly, chatting as though to put me at ease. Something about him struck me as unusual. His mannerisms felt dated, too formal, like he belonged in a different decade. But in my exhaustion, I didn't care. He handed me my key card, smiled, and said, "Rest well. You'll want to keep the chain on the door tonight." The way he said it made me pause. I asked what he meant, but he just chuckled softly and said, "Old habit of mine." Upstairs, my room was standard but clean. I set my bags down, locked the door, and, remembering his words, slid the chain lock across. The air felt heavy in the room, but I told myself I was just overthinking it. Within minutes, I was in bed, drifting off. Sometime later, I woke to a sound. At first, it was faint, just the creak of floorboards outside my door. Then came the unmistakable sound of the handle being tested. Slowly, gently, back and forth. I froze. My eyes darted to the door. The chain lock rattled lightly against the frame as the handle turned, stopped, then turned again. Whoever was there wasn't knocking or announcing themselves. They were simply trying to come in. I wanted to call the front desk, but my phone was on the nightstand near the door, only a few feet from that handle. I lay there, hardly breathing, as the sound continued for what felt like forever, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I waited, staring at the door, until my exhaustion pulled me under again. When I woke in the morning, sunlight spilled into the room. Everything looked normal, and I almost convinced myself I'd dreamt the entire thing. Downstairs, I went to check out and mentioned to the clerk, a young woman this time, about Thomas, the night manager, and how helpful he'd been. She looked confused. "Who?" "Thomas," I repeated. Gray vest, mid-40s, slicked back hair. He checked me in around midnight. Her face went pale. She shook her head slowly. "Ma'am, we don't have a night manager. After 10 p.m., this desk is locked." "No one's here overnight?" I felt a chill spread down my spine. I told her I saw him. I even remembered his name tag. But she insisted again. The hotel didn't employ anyone by that name. Still uneasy, I stepped outside into the morning air, eager to leave. But as I wheeled my bag to the car, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. One of the lobby windows was tinted from the outside, but reflected perfectly from within. And there he was. Thomas stood just inside the glass, watching me with that same polite, unblinking smile. I froze in place, my stomach dropping. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining him, but then, slowly, he raised his hand and with deliberate precision tapped 3 times against the glass. The sound was muted, but it echoed in my chest like a warning. I stumbled into my car and drove off, my heart pounding, my hands slick on the wheel. I didn't look back. To this day, I don't know what I met that night in that empty lobby. But I do know this, whoever he was, he wanted me to stay. And if I had, I don't think I'd be here to tell the story.